Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome you all to this celebration of life for the amazing and the legendary George Fleming. George will be remembered as one of the most impactful, inspiring, and accomplished Huskies of all time, which is why it's so fitting that we get to celebrate his life right here in Husky Stadium, where his relationship with this community began. Around our athletic department, George's accomplishments on the field are well known. His Rose Bowl wins, his MVP award, his Hall of Fames, and of course, his role in helping the Huskies win their first ever national championship. Yet he's most admired by us Huskies for the champion he was off the field. He was a champion for this community. He was a champion for the underrepresented. He was a champion for his family. He was a champion for his friends, for this university, and for this state. For me personally, it was an honor knowing George. The best way I could describe it was just this aura that he had around him. I was in awe of him. He embodied this combination of grit and grace, goodness and kindness, but determination and commitment. I walked away after every interaction with him wanting to become a better version of myself. I'm sure y'all felt the same way. His life, his legacy, it's everything that we would ever want for a former student athlete here at Washington. He used his platform as an experiences as a student athlete to go on and do even greater things within our community and the world. He was and remains a role model for all of our students and for all of us. And because of this, and with the family's blessing, Husky Athletics has established the George Fleming Champion Award, which will be awarded annually to a student athlete who most embodies George's values and shows a commitment to community, service, and advocacy. Congratulations to the family. George may be gone, but his impact will live on forever in the lives of all future Huskies. Tina, the girls, your families, you will always have a home here on Montlake, and he will always have a special place in our hearts. May he rest in peace, and go Dogs. Typical Jen Collins right there, sorry.
I did not push her into that. I get blamed for everything. I did not push Jen Cohen into that. So my name is Bruce Harrell. I'm the mayor of the city of Seattle, and I know at least, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And if you're following the order of service, I know what a few of you are thinking. He's not even on the program. Why is he up there? So in typical football fashion, we called an audible. And the audible is that Nate Miles, the MC, got stuck in California, and there's nothing I wouldn't personally do for the family and for George, and so I'm subbing in as an audible. And in that sense, you know how the Fleming family is. They have this stuff down to the wire. So they're already looking at me thinking, Bruce, that was not in the script. So let us assure the family, first of all, we're going to take a deep breath. We're not going for perfection here, we're going for love. And so to the extent I mess up, yeah, I'm gonna mess up. And anyone else messes up, it's okay, because we're here for the right reason. And having said that, who better to lead us in prayer and share a few words than the Honorable and Reverend Ron Sims, former Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, King County, former King County Executive, and most importantly, a legislative aide to Senator George Fleming. I present to you the one and only Ron Sims.
It is an honor to be here today and express my deep admiration and love and affection for a state senator who hired somebody he did not know and asked me to come into his office, and who put up with me for a number of years. He taught me the dignity of public service. He taught me to listen to other people. He used to say to me that it's easy to dislike people. It is harder to love them. It's easier to turn your back to people rather than extend a hand and help them. And all he would do that every day. He would find something, he would say, oops, this needs a subtle tweak. Never a complaint, just a subtle tweak. And so I look at him as a person who embodied much of what I wanted to be, much of what I needed to be. I had to park my immaturity. I had to park my arrogance and indifference and realize that everybody who came through that door counted. Everybody who needed help would be helped. Everybody who needed patience would find that patience. And every once in a while he'd say to me, you hug a lot of people. And I say, Senator, I'm from a family that hugs people. We just hug. And he would say, well, you got to be careful down in Olympia who you hug. And I said, you know, I hug the people who are at work those doors for us. I hug the people who come in here in need of your service. I said, my granddaddy told me that a hug screams out loud of your love and respect for another person. And Senator Fleming then let me loose with my hugs. And I think I became a much better person than I would have ever been because he let that happen. And you might say, that's it? Oh, no. He taught me the world of politics. He taught me how to keep your word. He taught me how to listen to people who I would never listen to and realize that they too have a need. And that is the job of a public official to actually welcome people and their ideas, find a way to create teams. He was extraordinary. My wife said to me, now don't cry when you get up here. I said, I promise I won't cry until I leave. But he was worth crying for. I will miss him all of my days. So I never had a finer teacher. I never had a finer teacher other than my mom and my dad. They're all up in heaven right now, and I know what they're all saying. Well, we got as much as we could out of him. He's got some work ahead, and we'll just have to talk to his wife. So, just needed to say that. Why don't we stand, though, because I'm an old school person, and I'm a Baptist. And when we were kids, we were told you never stood up without grabbing the hand next to you. Even if there was an aisle, you would grab the hand. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the blessings of Senator Fleming in all of our lives. His patience, his understanding, his encouragement. On behalf of the public that he served, we want to say thank you for everything you did, those hours, those nights, and those days. We want to thank you for his family that allowed him to give up so much of his time, their time, so that he may serve us and make this a better state, a better community. Thank you for the talent you gave him to do that. Thank you for what he did in every endeavor he undertook. whether it was sports or politics. Thank you for allowing him to have both the wisdom to bring people into his workspace and the patience to allow them to grow up and mature. So in all things, we say thank you. But we're all here today because Senator Fleming touched every life in the room, and every life is a story. So thank you for the library that you brought together today. Thank you for what was written on their hearts and their minds. And thank you for allowing us to see someone and know someone who was extraordinary in all the things that he did. Whether it was on the field of athletics, whether it was in politics, whether it was in business. Thank you for allowing someone to reshape who we are and what the state is. Thank you for his values. So in all things, all of us in this room wish just to say, thank you, Father, for this incredible blessing and the gift of Senator Fleming in our lives. Amen. Amen.
I saw Ron Sims hopping up and down this thing, not using the stairs, showing off like that, Ron. Guy walks like 20 miles a day. I can't compete with that. Okay. So I'm going to recognize a few dignitaries, and then we're going to hear from, we're going to see a video, and we're going to hear from at least our governor. So, but let me do a few logistical things, say a few words as the program allows. So my personal relationship with Senator Fleming went back to when my wife and I worked for what we called the phone company then. It was Pacific Northwest Bell, then it converted to US West. And I didn't tell the family the story, but it was toward the end of his political career, but he was really in his stride. And the phone company just broken up. You guys remember, you guys are old like me. You remember how there was one phone company that broke up? Yeah, I know you guys do. And we were in the cafeteria. And it's myself, and I was in like my 30s, you know, and like 10 years ago. And we're in a cafeteria, and there were two other people, and I was sitting here, and there wasn't a chair, and George worked there, and he was, like I say, he was a senator, and he came in there, and I said, hey, George, would you like a seat at the table? And he stood there, and he says, a seat at the table? You know, we have to have a seat at the table. In fact, when you get to the table, you just can't sit down. You have to have your voice heard. And I'm like, I just want to know if the brother wanted to have some lunch here. And then he went on to talk about what being at the table meant and about the issues for our community we had to build up. And we were much younger, and it's not like you could eat when he's talking. So we're like frozen. Now he proceeds to open up his little canister and takes a few French fries out, and he's just getting riled up. Puts a few fries in his mouth, and see what you have to understand, particularly as an African American, you have to not only be heard, you have to be seen, and you have to speak truth to power. And I want you guys to understand this because, you know, as you guys think about your political careers, you grab a couple more fries, and I'm thinking, can we eat our lunch here? Or the brother talked about 15 minutes, but it was so inspirational. So then he finishes the fries. He's got a sandwich in there too. I'm thinking, is this brother going for overtime here? So he walks away, and the other two people I were with said, man, he's really profound. He's really passionate for what he believes in. And they were looking for some profundity from me, for some wisdom at the point, and I just said, well, the brother likes his fries. That's all I had at the time. But when I had decided to run for mayor, and there were 15 people running, and you know all the issues we're dealing with, and I said, you know, I like a job tougher than Jen Cohen's job. I mean, she's always under fire. There's always something we have to do running this big old program. And I said, yeah, Mayor of Seattle, that sounds about right. So I called the family. Of course, George was with me for every single election. And you're going to hear that theme about how he mentored people and how he taught people. He was truly committed to others and truly a life of service. He dispelled of the sort of the, I was trying to think of a political way to say this, the dumb jock notion, right? Is that acceptable to say? Probably not, but that won't be the first mistake I made. That concept that athletes could only play sports, he dispelled with that, and you're going to hear from other people that also dispelled that notion. But he truly was, in so many ways, both how he lived his life, he's a strong family man, a devoted man, truly an inspiration. I think you're going to see that throughout this afternoon. And last, I'll say that when I was called to sub in, if you will, I said there was nothing I would like to do. And so I'm going to let you know, if I do a decent job, that in about 3 years or so, when I run for re-election and some of you pass away, I'd be more than happy to MC your service as well. If we could get the facility here, just letting you know that now, if I do an adequate job. Okay. So we have several dignitaries here, and if I miss anyone, somehow get me a note, because you all have masks on like you're supposed to, and we have some spotters here. You're going to hear from some of these folks. We're going to hear from Sean Bills, the Senator Patty Murray's chief of staff, and there's going to be a video associated with Senator Murray. Of course, Governor Inslee here. Save your applause. Governor Inslee is here, and you will hear from the governor with First Lady Trudy Inslee. Mayor Bruce Harrell and I'm here. And my lovely wife, Joanne Harrell, is here, First Lady. UW President Anamari Kasi is here. Where's Anamari? Thank you, Anamari. Thanks for letting us in your home. You've heard from my great friend and fraternity brother, Honorable Ron Sims. We have Honorable Gary Locke here. Thank you, Gary Locke, for being here. The Honorable Frank Trop is here. They didn't put honorable in front of my name. What's with this honorable stuff? John Arthur Wilson, our accessors here. Thank you for being here, John. You're going to hear from family member and Renton City Council member Ed Prince is here, and Ed's with the family. Ed's with his beautiful family here. And the Honorable Sharon Tamiko Santos is here. I see her here. Thank you for being here, Sharon, my sister. The Honorable Phil Talmadge is here. Where are you, Phil? I'm mad at this dude, by the way, and he knows why. Because we played in, we call it a semi-pro baseball game, and he bragged he struck me out in this important game. I bragged that I didn't swing at the ball, and the umpire made a bad call. And I forgive him for that. I did not swing, Ron, because it was 5 inches outside the plate. Supposed to be, okay. And of course, my dear friend and leader doing tremendous things, who continues, the Honorable Jesse Wineberry. Where are you, Brother Wineberry? I saw you earlier, right here. Thank you, Brother Wineberry. And if I missed anyone, please let me know, and I'd love to acknowledge you. So next we're going to hear from and recognize I want to recognize Senator Murray's Chief of Staff, Sean Bills, who will introduce the video. So Sean, please come forward. Where are you, Sean? Did I see Sean? Come on forward, Sean. Are you going to Ron Sims it, or are you going to Bruce Harrell it? Huh? Okay, you're going to Ron Sims it. All right.
In true fashion, I did not know that I was supposed to say anything today, so Senator Murray will do it far better than I ever could. But to say something to the family, when we approached Senator Murray with this news and a statement was asked for, she took a big step back and said, you know, he was my friend, and this is what I want to say, and that's rare in this world. So anyways, to the family, thank you for having us here, and Senator Murray has a video for you. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, I'm United States Senator Patty Murray, and while I can't be there in person, it's truly an honor to share with you a few words about my friend, Senator George Fleming. In this challenging time for George's family and friends, I want you to know I join you in mourning the loss of such a great friend, mentor, legislator, and leader. I first got to know George when I was newly elected to the Washington State Senate, and he was serving as caucus chairman. I learned quickly what so many of you know as well,
how deeply he not only cared about helping people, but how much he wanted to help build future leaders. Critically, he showed so many people, especially young Black men, that they not only belonged in the halls of the legislature, but that they could lead in those halls. You will hear today about all of George's great accomplishments, which, make no mistake, are remarkable. But his greatest legacy, to me, will continue to carry on in the incredible family he has raised with his wife, Tina, in their daughters and grandkids, and in the countless others like me who he took the time to mentor and foster our potential. I'm very grateful to George, and I will miss him dearly. My thoughts are with all of you today as we honor such an incredible Washington State leader. Thank you.
Next, it's my honor to introduce our governor, who I think we all owe a debt of gratitude in terms of his leadership during COVID, his leadership during homelessness, his leadership for the environment. But one thing that's not commonly talked about is his commitment to diversity. When you look at the appointments he's made to great institutions on the Board of Regents and trustees, you look at the judges he selected, the commissioners he selected. Some people talk it, some people walk it, and he does both. And so I present to you our governor and our leader, Governor Jay Inslee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your comments about diversity. And let me say that George Fleming was such a hero of the state of Washington, even cougars are going to recognize him. That's the diversity we're talking about today. Tina, thank you. This is an honor for Trudy and I to be able to join you. We want to honor you, too, for the public service that George was involved with. I know from Trudy and all our spouses what you have done for the public service of the state of Washington. And my comments are directed to you as well. So I'm speaking on behalf of 7.5 million Washingtonians, but I speak for myself as well. I'd like to start by speaking for myself. In my constellation of heroes, and we all have heroes, in my constellation of heroes, George Fleming was unique. I have a number of heroes, but he was unique. And he was unique because he was a hero when I was 9 years of age, and he's a hero of mine today when I'm 71. That's unique to have someone who's a hero when you're a young person and when you're not such a young person. And he was unique to me because I remember the moment when he scored that touchdown against Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. I was 9 years of age. I can hear, and I could hear it coming through the tube, that cheering. And that moment is with me today. And that was thrilling to me. And he was a hero, and it's interesting. I don't really know why. I mean, there's a lot of football players, right? But that moment just sticks with me. And he became a hero to me as a young person. But then as a state legislator, when I got elected in 1988, and seeing his legacy, he was a hero to me at a later life because of his leadership in the public realm. And I know we know it, but it is extraordinary. From the Office of Women and Minority Business Enterprises to the Housing Finance Commission. We have these things, and right now I think some people think, well, of course we have a Housing Finance Commission. It wasn't an assumption. George made it happen. Of course we have a Martin Luther King holiday, but that isn't something that just happened. George's leadership made that happen. And I do want to read something he said when he passed the Martin Luther King celebration in the state of Washington. He said, "Let us meet excuses with persistence, frustration with redoubled efforts, disappointment with hope. Let us meet hatred with love and compassion, and in this way we will honor Martin Luther King." George Fleming's public service honored Martin Luther King every single day, and that legacy has now made Washington a richer state because of it, and I want to honor him. And today, when you think of all of his legacy of a great family, I like to think of the legacy as he was the second black senator in Washington state history. We now have 10 black legislators in Washington state legislature. That is a legacy that we ought to think about as well. So I think when we think of a person's life, maybe the best way to measure it is ask what you would tell a young person about our friend's life. What I would tell them is, if you're talking to a young football player, run like George Fleming. If you're talking to a young person in public life, lead like George Fleming. Thank you, Tina. We appreciate what you've done for us, too.
Just like your note to file, Jay Inslee had to use the stairs. He's like 6'4", but he couldn't hop up on the stage. I'm trying to make sure the rhythm is nice because it looks a little, I want to honor the family the right way, but you know, Ron, you started this stuff, Ron. I'm trying to hop up and down like you. Already threw my hip out trying to do it. So I'm going to keep using the stairs. I can do it, though. I just want the record reflected there. Okay, so we're going to have a wonderful song by a family member, Barbara Wells Picu, and she's going to sing a lovely tune, Don't Cry for Me.
Here we are again, that old familiar place, where the wind will blow, no one ever knows the time nor space. Don't cry for me. Don't shed a tear. The times I've shared with you will always be here. And when I'm gone, still carry on. Don't cry for me. Don't cry for me. No one is the blame, no. My death was meant to be. Don't carry guilt nor shame. The reason why I came, soon you'll see. Don't cry for me. Don't shed a tear. The times I've shed with you will always be here. And when I'm gone, still carry on. Don't cry for me. Don't cry when life is not the joy it should bring. With life comes pain. Soon time will end its course appointed, and you will be rewarded for all the world to see. Don't cry for me. Don't you dare shed a tear. The times I've shed with you will always be. And when I'm gone, Lord's memory is on. Don't cry for me, and still I say, don't cry for me.
Thank you, Barbara. What a beautiful song. So before I introduce the next speaker, the family did want me to just say a few words about Senator Fleming, about substantively some of the things he did. So many of you know that he migrated here from Texas, and that was, of course, part of the great migration that African Americans would come here from down south. Isabel Wilkerson wrote about that in the book, The Warmth of Other Suns. Many of you experienced it. My black family came here from Louisiana. Many of you come from Alabama and Mississippi and Texas, and we came up here for this great weather. We came for jobs and opportunity, educational opportunities. And George epitomized what he did in the legislature. Unashamedly black, unashamedly fighting for those who needed a voice. You know, right now we live in a time where we understand Black Lives Matter, but many folks also grew up in an era where we said, say it loud. Black and I'm proud. Black is beautiful. Black power. George sort of established his political legs with that legacy, with that work, with that passion, making it such that a person like me could be mayor someday. Ron Sims could do the things that he did. Jesse Weinberg could do the things that he did. That's George Fleming. He was truly a trailblazer. He was the highest ranking member elected position of the Senate Democratic Caucus chairman for over a decade. And these are times where, these are some tough times. I'll just leave it at that. These are some tough times. What a leader. He also did some sort of cool stuff, like he started the tradition, the annual Governor's Bowl, things like that. So I guess his legs were not just for running over people on the football field. I was told he could dance a little bit, Tina. That's what they told me in my notes. So you guys could cut a rug is what I was told. So one person that would know George is better, if not to some extent, was going to be the next speaker. I'm going to introduce Dr. Carver Gayton, a former University of Washington administrator with the Boeing Company executive. He's an author, a state employment security commissioner. He too is a Husky football legend, and he too is a University of Washington teammate of Senator George Fleming. And before Carver comes up here, Carver, we're taking the stairs. We're going to ignore Ron's athleticism. And I saw Dr. Gayton and his brother Gary, who's also graced us with his presence, coming in here. And they actually, they were friends with my mother and father. And what's interesting is my brother and I used to argue a lot. I never see those brothers arguing a lot. They always get along. I just think that's so unfair when brothers are always palling around like that. My brother always tried to beat me up. I present to you Dr. Carver Gayton.
Where are the stairs?
Right here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's a real honor for me to be here this afternoon. There's so much to say about George, but I'm certainly gonna do my best. An unbelievable individual. I had such a privilege of getting getting to know him over many years. Memories of a star. My prayers and condolences go to Sonia, Hemi, Tina, and the entire Fleming family. It's an honor to be here. There are 40 other teammates up here. That's how large our team was, about 44 teammates. They would be up here, if they could, to sing the praises of George Fleming. In fact, it was about it was about 11 o'clock this morning that I got a call from one of our teammates, and he was in tears. He said, "Gosh, I've been trying to get, to the remembrance this morning, but I won't be able to do it because my wife is ill. But I'm so sorry that I can't make it." And tears in his eyes, the fact that he could not be here. For the family to ask me to be in this role, to talk about those years, is indeed humbling. My friendship with George goes back, can you believe it? I have a hard time getting it out. 65 years. When it started was Coach Owens gave me a call. I was 1 year ahead of George at the university. And Coach Owens gave me a call, and he said, "There's an outstanding athlete that's going to be coming up here, and I want you to be able to talk to him, to convince him to play for the University of Washington. And so I want you to take him out, take him to dinner, and show him around the town and so on. But he's coming up from California. I think it was East Los Angeles Junior College that he was going to. He was playing quarterback, down there in that junior college, and was breaking records there. But anyway, they wanted me to talk to him. He's going to come up for the weekend. And so I did get in contact with him. We're talking about 1958. What was indicated was that when he was in high school, he was not only a great football player, but he was a track guy and also played basketball, all-around athlete. But George wanted to go to UCLA, of all places. That's why he was at that junior college in LA. And the coaches up here knew about him. They were from Texas. They knew about George and all that he had done down there, in that high school program in Booker T. Washington High School. So anyway, he came up for the weekend. They gave me a little stipend to take him to dinner, and then do a couple other things. We're going to stay all the way through that Sunday. And so I got in contact with him, and my first impressions of him was a very, everybody, his personality, very likable guy, great sense of humor, sharp dresser, and right off, you're connected with him. That's what he was able to do with me, and I said, I know I'm going to like this guy. This is really something. We're going to enjoy ourselves at least for this next couple of days. Hopefully, we'll be able to keep him longer. And I don't know if you remember this. I guess I'm showing my age, but there was a place right off of 15th in Madison called the Maryland Freeze. Later on, it became the restaurant of Eddie Cotton, the boxer. But anyway, they had, at this Maryland Freeze, they had the great hamburgers, unbelievable milkshakes, and you had kids were coming from throughout the area, primarily in the central area. And so that's where I took them. You had these 3 layers of hamburger slabs and all that sort of business, and it was just wonderful. Then later I took them to the Home of Good Barbecue. Here, so I wanted to cover all the bases, with regard to this unbelievable young man. And so we had fun. We had a lot of fun. But one thing that was scheduled was going to Broadmoor Country Club, the golf course. Broadmoor Golf Club. And the Coach Owens was going to be there, and the 2 coaches, one the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And I knew about Broadmoor, but I never went there. They had those restrictive covenants and all that sort of business. But I knew people that went there. They were usually waiters and caddies. And they had a hard time getting in, And so I said, guys, this is really something that here George is going to be, with us over at Broadmoor. And so we went out on the putting green. And George, unbelievable athlete. Yeah, I don't know anything about golf. And he'd go up there with, with the coaches, and he was knocking that ball in the hole. And I said, this guy's really, really doing it. But we were there, for brunch, and it just worked out great. We had a really good time. I think the whole weekend was good, and I think there's mutual appreciation and respect between the two of us. So he went back home to Los Angeles. He did not indicate whether or not he was going to come to the university. The UCLA people were still waiting in the wings, for that. But after he went back, he called a couple weeks later and told Coach Owens, that he was coming to the University of Washington. And this was unbelievable. And so when he came up here, it was beginning of the latter part of the summer, beginning of two-a-day drills at the University of Washington. This, again, the 58 season. But when we're practicing, before we got into the game schedule, here I'm seeing this fellow out there on the field. The smoothness of his strides and so on. And then he was an extra point kicker. He was kicking that ball back then, 40 yards. The old style of kicking, with the square at the end of the shoe straight ahead, didn't have the soccer style, but he could knock that thing way out. All of these different things that he could do athletically. I've never seen an athlete be able to do all those things. But when we started off, there were 4 of us who were black on the team. 4 blacks. And one of them was a fellow by the name Luther Carr, another was me, there's George, and Tony, a fellow by the name of Tony Softly. And guess where they put all of us? We all played at left halfback, the entire team, out of 44 people. And so there was Luther Carr was his similar personality with George. He always had a good, quick retort on things and sense of humor and so on. But he was quoted, I think it was in Sports Illustrated, and they were talking about stacking. And the thing that Luther said, the reason why they had all the brothers at left halfback, because they felt that these guys could only run to the right. And so all of us were in that same position. But they're trying to, I guess they're part of an old school affirmative action program. They changed it, for the next season and had 2 of us at left halfback and 2 of us at fullback. So they thought they were accomplishing a great deal. But but George really blossoms during the 1959 season. He rose to the occasion during the 1960 Rose Bowl with Wisconsin. And George, I tell you, what happened in that Rose Bowl was something I never witnessed before or since. He was ready for that. Here we had the center stage of 108,000 folks in Pasadena and Rose Bowl. 108,000 fans. And literally millions of people that are watching it. And George is in his state of mind with regard to this. Very quickly, I'm just going to give you some statistics that he did. And there's so much behind the statistics, but I'm going to mention a few things here. He racked up 122 yards in punt returns, including one for a touchdown, and 80 yards in kickoff returns. He caught one pass for 65 yards, and then that went on to a touchdown. And then he's a place kicker. I mean, can you imagine? Here you are with this fellow. Let's say he's a halfback, and he scores a touchdown. The next thing, and after he scores, he's going to kick the extra point. So, and he takes off his shoe and he kicks the extra point. Who have anybody seen that somebody does something like that? But anyway, that was George. That was him in relation to his athleticism. He ended up with 272 all-purpose yards. Now, as a result of this, and this is kind of a little bit controversial, as a result of this, he was named MVP along with teammates Bob Schlorett. Bob Schlorett was, All-American, really fine quarterback, fine guy. But he was named co-MVP. But if anybody had seen that game, what George did through that whole game, there would be no question that he would be the MVP. And I think Bob Schlorett felt the same. In fact, I heard that's what he said, but that wasn't the case. So that rubbed folks a little bit, in the wrong way. But I had never seen an individual football player do something like that, what George did during that game, like I said, before or since. There was a little bit of solace, I think, in that regard, because what happened, individually in relation to him, he was named to the Husky Hall of Fame in 1980. He was named a Husky Legend in 1998. And he was also individually placed in the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame in 2012. The 1960 Rose Bowl was the first University of Washington football team. Rose Bowl had been going on since the early 1900s. First University of Washington football team they inducted into the Hall of Fame. The 1961 team, I won't go into detail about that, but I'll just mention that was a national championship team that he was part of, that had a significant role. And during that game, can you imagine, he kicked a field goal of 44 yards during that game, and doing it the old-fashioned way. George went on to play pro ball down in the Bay Area, and then from there he went to Canada and played for the Canadian League, and did outstanding things that broke the field goal records there. But I'm going to finish chapter, come to an end here. It said the true character of George is reflected in an interview that he had with the LA Times with a reporter after the 1960 Rose Bowl game. And he was elated, George, and so the reporter caught all this. He said, and George was shouting at him, "What an experience. I'm glad for Coach Owens and the other coaches who worked so hard with us. I'm glad for the team." He said, with regard to me, well, I just felt so good out there. I couldn't stop running. Everything worked. Don't forget, this is the key line with regard to that interview. It was the other fellows. It was the other fellows that made it possible for me to travel. That turn of phrase is be able to travel. All the things that he did, that's it. And he was going 1,000 miles an hour with regard to that traveling, I tell you. But that says a lot about him and how he conducted himself in his political life. George was a team man. Our common interest as a team was to win football games, but making sure we did not sacrifice our individual integrity in the process. We utilize our team's broad diversity, and I'm not talking just about race, all the other elements that come into play with regard to this. If you take one element out, it would make it so we may not be successful. You've got to have that kind of thing that's indefinable, that creates the kind of team, really, that we had. We were a magical team, and George Fleming was simply an outstanding leader who contributed greatly to what we became. Some arguably will say the greatest team in the history of the University of Washington. Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much. May you rest in peace.
Thank you so much, Carver. What's so fascinating about that is, you know, Carver's got a few records out here too for him to. Carver, what was the name of the place that preceded Eddie Cotton? Something Freeze, what did you call it? Maryland Freeze. Well, when he mentioned Maryland Freeze, just a few nods went up, but when he said home of good barbecue, everyone said, oh, we understand that. I also want to recognize that we do have Council Member Clarence Moriwaki from Bainbridge, a city of Bainbridge Island. Where are you, Clarence? Thank you for Bainbridge, of course. Thank you very much. And Dr. Brent Jones, our superintendent of Seattle Public Schools, is here. Where are you, Dr. Jones? And I see his, of course, sitting in back of his parents, Joe and Mona. I want to recognize Joe and Mona here, too. Joe Jones got a few records out here, too. Thanks for being here. Mention names like Luther Carr, Tony Softly, and Carver and George. I could only imagine the trouble they would get into. Legends. Our next speaker will be the Honorable Gary Locke, currently the current interim president of Bellevue College, former U.S. ambassador to China, U.S. Secretary of Commerce, governor of this great state of Washington, former King County executive, and a former Washington State House of Representatives. Someone must have told Gary he should go into politics at some point in his life. I present to you the one and only Gary Locke.
Thank you a lot. Thank you very much, Bruce, Mr. Mayor, Tina, Sonia, Yemi. It's really a pleasure to be here. You know, what Carver didn't mention is that George wanted to go to UCLA. And UCLA, well, he really wanted to go to the Rose Bowl. He knew from a kid he wanted to go to the Rose Bowl. And being in LA, he thought maybe he'd get there via UCLA. UCLA actually took a pass on him. Thank you, UCLA. Thank you, UCLA. Because he came to the University of Washington, and we have been so blessed by George Fleming and his entire family being here in our state. We heard a lot about his accomplishments, and like Governor Inslee, I too remember listening to those Husky football games on Como radio as a kid, and hearing the exploits of George Fleming. The record-setting field goals, running back, a punt return for a touchdown, the pass reception, he did it all. And then he set records for the Oakland Raiders, and then was the Rookie of the Year and had more points and more yards scored up in Canada. And then then City Council member Sam Smith, after he came to the Seattle City Council and left the state legislature, encouraged George Fleming to run for the seat in the House, the seat that Sam Smith held. 37th District, position number 2, elected in 1968, and then a few years later to the state Senate. I met George Fleming in 1981, or actually the winter of December of 1980. And I was interviewing for a job, session job, part-time job, temporary job in the Washington State Legislature. I knew nothing about Washington State politics. I knew nothing about the Washington State Legislature, but a common political guru, political mentor, Ruth Wu, said, "Oh, you should run for office." And I said, "Me?" And she says, "Well, you should, get a glimpse of the legislature and maybe work for the legislature during the session." And so I got an interview and ultimately had to meet with Senator George Fleming. I was so nervous. Here's this football hero that you grew up with, and suddenly you're interviewing him, and he was so gracious, incredibly well-dressed, always well-dressed. And I think that was part of his trademark. So well-dressed. And he treated me with such kindness and with such patience, and he put me at ease. And I did finally get a job there, serving as the attorney for the Senate Higher Education Committee, and I got a glimpse of what the legislature was all about. And a few years later, I had the privilege and the honor of being elected 25 years later, after George Fleming was elected, to the very same seat in the House of Representatives, Legislative District 37, position number 2. And I have to tell you that George Fleming was a giant in the state legislature. Now, of course, when he entered the legislature, it was a time of great activism and boldness and initiative in our state. It was the time of the Vietnam War, civil rights protest, and under Governor Dan Evans, the creation of the Department of Social and Health Services, the Department of Ecology, community college system. It was also the time in which the state of Washington welcomed Vietnamese refugees to our state when so many other states turned their back to them. George Fleming was part and parcel of all of those initiatives. George Fleming helped make all those things that we take for granted possible. And we've heard others talk about the Housing Commission, the Housing Trust Fund, and so many other things that we now take for granted. He served under Governors Evans, Governor Dixley Ray, Governor John Spellman, Governor Booth Gardner. I only wish that he had not retired so soon, that he could have been in the legislature when I was governor, so that he could have pushed through the way that he did with so many other initiatives under other governors, that he could have done the same for me. But more than anything about George Fleming, maybe it goes back to his football days. He was a coach. He was a coach to so many people in Olympia. He found talent and he nurtured them. He molded them. He guided them. People like Vicky Fabre, Ron Sims, Nate Miles, Lynn French. People who went on to careers in business and politics or headed up statewide associations. He gave people a chance. He took chances on people, even if they didn't fit the traditional mold. That was his method of affirmative action. Not taking unqualified people, but taking a risk on people and seeing the inner goodness and the qualities and the potential of people and nurturing them and helping them along. When he joined the state legislature, and I see also Art Wong here, also former state legislator, so thank you very much for joining us, Art. But when George Fleming was in the state legislature, there were very few people of color, maybe one or two others. And so as more and more people of color came to the state legislature, Asian Americans, Hispanics, more African Americans, and ultimately Native Americans, he was in many ways the dean. He was of all of us. You know, he was the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, but he was also the leader and really the caucus chair of legislators of color. And so, like a coach, he guided us, he supported us, he took an interest in the issues that we were working on, and he was not at all reluctant to chew us out, to say, you're messing up, you're missing an opportunity, you're not doing this right. And they were at a time when many legislators of color started coming in, especially into the state Senate. Some of them wanted to buck him and say they were now the leaders and really trying to, maybe establish themselves. They were in for a rude awakening. They were in for a rude awakening. Nobody can displace George Fleming or his prestige and his effectiveness. He was a workhorse. And, Carver talks about how all the African-American athletes were relegated to being left halfback. The truth of the matter is that Husky football in those days was also pretty discriminatory, and African-Americans were always trying to be kept in their place. When the legislature was also pretty rough and tumble. And it was not really open to legislators and people of color either. You know, positions were relegated for people of color. To be an elected official, well, that's pretty rare. Sam Smith, Charlie Stokes, Mr. Ross, Peggy Maxey, and George Fleming and others, they had a hard time. They had a hard time. But George was able to persevere and be effective because he treated people equally, even if they didn't want to be on the elevator with him. He took an issue in their interest, whether it was urban or rural. And he defied the stereotypical mold that people of color and people from the urban areas had to be focused only on certain types of issues. So he focused on job creation. He focused on education, math, and science. He focused on issues affecting municipal government. He focused on the issues of concern to everyday people. So in many ways, he was ahead of his time. He was very much a progressive, but he got things done through collaboration and hard work. He was not a showboat. He let his accomplishments and his dedication and his hard work do the talking for him, just like he did on the football field. So many of us were able to succeed because while he was a running back, in many ways he was also a block and tackler. He pushed the way. He opened the path for so many people. He, in many ways, was the conscience, the North Star of the state legislature, pushing for civil rights and civil liberties, affecting all groups, all peoples. And he had to endure a lot at the same time and take the brunt of the racism, the bigotry, the stereotyping. I remember some of those debates when he championed, for instance, redress for Japanese American state employees who had been terminated during World War II from government, not even able to graduate. And he pushed that legislation. And I remember so much of the vitriol by legislators who said, why should we do anything for people whose country fought against America? And they just could not understand that we're talking about American citizens, people who were born in America, who had been displaced and interned and put in concentration camps. And George led that fight. And because of the respect that people had for him and his eloquence, he convinced some people who otherwise were planning on voting no on that legislation. He was a true example of what it meant to be always championing what is right, no matter how unpopular. In a day in which politics is so divisive, we simply need more people like George Fleming. Thank you very much.
He still has it. I think we're giving Senator Fleming his due today. I feel it. We are honoring him the way he should be honored. Yes, sir. So we're going to have just a few minutes. We're winding down, but we're going to hear from the family now and the personal stories. We're going to hear from we're going to hear from Annette Swilley, who was the former senator's senior legislative assistant to the senator. We're going to hear from Miles Jackson, the grandson to the senator, and Tina's grandson. We're going to hear from Erica. Am I saying it right? Erica Nelson, the granddaughter. And we're going to hear from the Honorable, my friend, the Honorable Ed Prince, the city councilman from Renton, and also the nephew to the senator. So we're going to hear from them in that order. Annette, we're going to start with you.
Ooh, tall people. Good afternoon. I prepared my notes over and over and over again about George Fleming, and I heard most of the previous speakers say the things that I wanted to say about George for the people that didn't know him. He was an amazing man. And I want to say, first, thank you to Ron Sims and Nate Miles for letting George Fleming cut his boss teeth on them. So by the time I came around, he had softened a little bit. It's like being the last child. I'm the youngest in my family, so I get to hear those stories about how tough mom and dad were, and then the younger of us didn't get it all. But I was asked to speak and wanted to speak about George Fleming as a family man. And I want you all to know that he loves his family. His family meant the world to him. And I heard, and I'm going to call you Governor Locke because you were governor when I was there, so I'm going to continue to call you Governor Locke, talked about the hard times that George had when he was there. But people, he never complained. He never complained. He would come off the floor, and I'd see him, and I just imagine if I was on the football field with him, I didn't want to be in front of him. He would be marching off the floor, and he'd go in his office, and we'd turn the lights down low, and Nate and I would run in and do our little debrief when he wasn't as excited or happy about some of the things that were being said on the floor, or legislation that was going through, or his legislation that may or may not have had the support that he wanted. He never complained. And even on those hard days when he had been fighting all day or pushing all day or pressing all day, he would steal away into his office, and I'd hear him on the phone with his wife. And he had that way, his voice would just soften because he was a champion and he was a fighter and he was a great football player and all those things. But when he was talking to you, Tina, his voice would just soften. And I would hear him talking to you. And then when he was talking to the girls, you know, he always made sure that he touched base, that he stayed in contact. He was always aware of what was going on at home. He loved you guys, and that was amazing. And I just a young single person and don't understand that until I got married and had, you know, children of my own. But he loved you so much, and he never stopped thinking about you. So of all the things that he was doing, like I said, as the days would go on and we were working those late nights during session, I even heard a story of Governor Locke sleeping in one of the hearing rooms because he had been there for so long. But we would work some long days and nights, and he was caucus chair, and so he would have to be there sometimes at 7 o'clock when we had worked till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And people, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Google, we didn't have all those things. I had a manual typewriter. So we put in some long hours, but he never lost touch with home. And he always wanted to make sure that you were taken care of. I remember, again, we didn't have Google, and he wanted to buy, I want to think it's Peking duck. It was an anniversary or your birthday or something, and there was something from a Chinese food restaurant that he was trying to get, and you know, we had phone books back then, and I'm looking through the phone book, and he's like, oh, I think it's on this street, and I heard they had this wonderful meal, and he wanted to be able to pick something up and take it home to you, whether you were going to be awake or not, but he was thinking about you, and he wanted to be able to do that for you, you know, making sure that you had, I remember him going down to Portland. There was something that he wanted to buy you for your birthday. And he had asked around and found out that it was in Portland. And so it was like, I'm going to leave work and drive down there and pick this up and turn around back to Seattle just to support you, give you your gift, knowing he had to be back to work the very next morning. He loved you guys. I don't know what else I can say. It's just amazing to see the tough times he went through. Governor Locke said it, there were times people didn't want to ride the elevator with him. People would mistakenly call him the doorman as he was standing outside of his office. He never complained. He kept working. He kept pushing. He kept giving. He kept being an honorable man. And I'm looking around, I'm looking at Clarence and some of the others. The Democratic caucus at the Senate was so diverse. When I got there, there were women, that was a first. There were people of color, that was a first. There were people with different identities, that was a first, when it wasn't so popular. But the other thing about George Fleming was he was ever evolving. He wasn't a pompous man, he wasn't, you know, full of hot air. He was always learning. And I remember when he ran for lieutenant governor, a statewide campaign, there are areas where I'm like, are you sure we want to go to that county by ourselves? But wherever he went, he was the same. If you knew George Fleming, you knew George Fleming. I can imagine it was the same on the football field as it was, at the legislature. People loved him because he was so genuine, and he had compassion for everybody, and he led with his heart. People just loved him no matter where he was. And so, I laugh because, and I probably still have this list, if anybody has a floppy disk reader, computer, I could pull all this up. But there was somebody, and we looked at it one day, he had a person in every county in this state, every city in this state, that supported him, that loved him, because he was just such an amazing man. And so what I want to say to you, to Tina and Sonia and Yemi and your entire family, thank you for sharing him with us. Being an elected official, I'm looking at 2 other first ladies here, and it's not easy. It's a great sacrifice. And Mrs. Fleming, you held home down so that he could do what he did for the rest of us. So not only for the 37th district or the state of Washington, his footprint is in other continents, in other countries. I remember wrapping up chocolates and candies because he was going on a trip to Taiwan or wherever it was he was going. You held home down. You shared him with us. So you gave as much as he gave. And I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to you and your girls and your entire family for sharing him with us. He was an amazing man. He will always be an amazing man. And I'm looking out at the picture on the field, and it's hard for me to see that, but he was even bigger than that. He is an amazing man. He will always be an amazing man. He will remain an amazing man. And you don't have to come to Husky Stadium or to George Fleming Place or see his name on some sort of marquee to know that, because he's always here. I'm looking at the legacy of your family. His greatness continues. So thank you. I'm going to sit down. I could be up here for hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and God bless you.
Hello, my name is Miles Jackson. Where do I start about Senator George Fleming, also known as Papa to me and my sister Naya? Today you heard about how amazing my Papa was as an athlete and a groundbreaking state legislator. And now it is my privilege to tell you about how amazing Papa was to his family, including making us feel like we were the most important things in his life. My Papa had the biggest heart and a smile that could light up the room. And he always was available to offer words of wisdom and encouragement to help me stay focused. Now that I am older, I realize the significant impact Papa has had on my life when it comes to athletics, leadership, and family. For those who knew my Papa well, you know that when he aspired to achieve something, he worked hard to accomplish it and didn't give up. In fact, he instilled those same principles in his family. Papa would always tell me and my sister, and even my mom, if you work hard, stay focused, and keep your eyes on the prize, success will happen. So this is how I try to live my life. When I was young, I fell in love with the game of football, in large part because of Papa. I grew up watching football with Papa and listening to him talk about the Rose Bowl. I was also fortunate to watch Husky games sitting right over there on the 50-yard line with my Papa. I remember a conversation I had with Papa where I expressed frustration because my parents wouldn't let me play high school football until high school. And Papa told me, be patient, work hard, because your time will come. And it did. I've now played football for Kennedy Catholic High School for the past 3 years. In fact, a fond moment I had with Papa this year is when I told him that I switched my football number to the number he wore as an Oakland Raider, which made him so happy and is a way for me to continue and honor Papa's legacy. Papa's tireless leadership and advocacy for the underrepresented to all to ensure equal rights is so inspiring to me. As I've learned about all the different people and communities Papa helped, it makes me so proud to know that his impact is far-reaching. Papa has provided the template for my life to be a strong leader and advocate for others, and for that I am so grateful. Lastly, the most important thing Papa taught me is the importance of family. Ma and Papa is which me and my sister Naya call my grandma, attended all the grandkids' school and athletic events to show their love and support. We also traveled often with Ma and Papa to fun places like Hawaii, Disneyland, Palm Springs, Arizona, Las Vegas, and Sun River, which are memories our family will cherish forever. But the best memories are when we spent Seafirst Sunday watching the Blue Angels on Ma and Papa's big deck, listening to music, having fun, and eating great food with family and friends. Papa loved his family, and we loved spending time with him. Papa will always have a special place in our hearts because he helped shape the person I am today in so many positive ways. Because of him, I am a better person, and the world is a better place. We love you, Papa, and you will never be forgotten. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Fleming's granddaughter, and I came into the world right at the end of his political career. Throughout my life, it's been a joy to have folks share with me facets of his personality or aspects of his character that I may not have seen tested, being that I was not a football player or a politician. But I suspect it will not be difficult for any of you to imagine the kind of loving and patient grandfather he was. When he died, it became apparent to me that so much of a person's legacy comes down to how they made others feel. Did they make you feel cared for, or as though they were proud of you? Did they make you feel special, capable, or unique? My grandfather did all of that for me, and I suspect for most of us here as well. I only have time to tell so many stories, but his ability to be present and make others feel valued is what I will remember most. So I began to think about how he did this and what I could do to make others feel loved as well. For starters, he had a wonderfully warm smile, which he would always greet me with at the front door. He was very considerate and wanted everyone to be comfortable and enjoy themselves. Some of you may know this from my grandparents' parties. But for me, when my brother and I were little and we would go sleep over at Grandma and Grandpa's house, Grandpa would wake up early and make us breakfast of bacon and Frosted Flakes. And we'd each have little napkins and our orange juice, and he'd make sure something good was on TV before going back to bed himself. He was thoughtful. Every birthday and holiday, I would receive these glittery, flowery cards with long cursive poems about how special of a granddaughter I was. But I would receive two. Not one from Grandma and one from Grandpa, but both from Grandma and Grandpa. And it was the sweetest thing I could think of that he would read all of these cards for his grandkids, and he couldn't decide, or he needed two to be able to say all that he wanted to say. These are the types of things that we can all do to better show one another our love. But there is one final thing that is fairly unique to him. Accomplished people, like my grandfather, hold themselves to impeccably high standards. But often they hold other people to those exact same standards without taking into account the person as an individual. But that was not my grandfather. I don't know the extent to which he knew he was doing this, and it's come up throughout this afternoon, but he led from behind. He made anything seem possible with hard work and dedication. And he conveyed his pride in what you were doing at all stages of your pursuit. No mistake or impasse was irredeemable. I'm now pursuing my PhD at Emory in political science, and I, thank you. And I know I wouldn't have found this path if it weren't for my grandpa. My family members have all developed deep personal ambitions of their own. And so much of this is because of him. Who he was changed what we thought was possible for ourselves. And this is a big part of a person's legacy, and just one of the many ways in which my grandpa will live with my family forever. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to be noted I came up the stairs. I'd be remiss to say how happy I am that you're the mayor of our fine city. Thank you very much. So only Uncle George could get this proud coug to wear a purple tie. He inspired my love for two things that I love the most outside of God and my family: football and public service. From an early age, I knew I wanted to follow in my uncle's footsteps because I saw the impact he had on people's lives. My political awakening happened in 1988 when I was in 7th grade and he ran for lieutenant governor, only the second African American to ever run statewide in the state of Washington, first Democrat. I was so sad on election night when he was behind that the next morning pre-internet, y'all, there was no internet in 1988, and pre-cell phone, I looked up the numbers for county election offices across the state. And I called them to get the latest numbers. When I heard he was gonna concede, I frantically called him and said, "Don't concede yet. More numbers are coming in from Yakima County." As an adult who better understands voting demographics, I can chuckle at the ridiculousness of that statement. But as a 13-year-old, I was dead serious. Oh, and I got in big trouble when the phone bill came and they saw all those long distance charges. When I worked in the legislature, where's Representative Santos? For Representative Sharon Tomiko Santos. He would stop by and check up on me and give me sage advice. He was the blueprint for so many aspects of my life: how to be a caring husband, how to be a loving father, and how to look out for those people who were voiceless. Since his passing, I have a note at my desk at home, and all it says on it is WWGD. What would George do? I look at that note, and when I have an issue, I'm not sure what the right path is, I look at that note and reflect, and instantly the answer comes to me. Thank you so much, Uncle, for being the man you were. You made me the man I am. I love you.
Thank you, Council Member. What a remarkable day. We're just about finished, but I'm really happy we gave our due. Brother Ron Sims, we're going to call upon you one more time to just lead us with a close, and we're not going to do that. We're going to listen to, George, you call an audible. We weren't sure if we were going to get Brother Nate Miles. He was Nordstrom's, because he was supposed to MC, I'm the Nordstrom's rack. So here's Nordstrom's Nate Miles on the video.
Never heard Nate this quiet.
Nate, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thanks. First, giving honor to God, who's the head of my life. I just want to say, Mom, to Sonia, Yemi, the rest of the grandkids, to the governor, the dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody gathered there. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to join you, but I'm told and have been able to watch and see Bruce do such an amazing job to this point. Mr. Mayor, thank you for stepping in and filling in. I think he's done a great job, don't you, ladies and gentlemen, to this point, our new mayor. Thank you, special appreciation. I want to thank you for doing this on behalf of the family. It's the first and hopefully only time that a Sigma will have to ask an Alpha to step in for him. But if I had to ask one, at least I asked the best Alpha that I know to do it. So thank you for stepping in and doing that. I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry for not being able to do that. I'm down in Los Angeles where I have 2 kids down there. And as Senator Fleming will tell you, sometimes when your kids ask you special favors, I've been away from my kids long enough to know that when they get that look in their eyes and they ask you to a special favor, you sometimes have to do what they want you to do. And it's one of those things I was not going to let them down. And the family knows and understands. And as long as they know and understand, then I know and understand. So thank you, Yemi and Sonia, for understanding. But, and I know your father would understand as well. So I did want to say that Senator Fleming is probably, to me, one of the most amazing people. I will say without a doubt, where I am today because of Senator Fleming. Senator George Fleming changed my life. He gave me the opportunity and gave me a shot when nobody else would in the political business, and took it and run with it. And Ron Sims was absolutely right. And I watched Ron. I saw you earlier, Ron. Thank you. And I know we're going to hear from you as you close us out. Thank you for recommending me to Senator Fleming on Sam Smith's recommendation originally and standing behind me. That was, and we've been brothers ever since in the fraternity of George Fleming graduates. Annette, you're in there too. You're in the sisterhood. So you didn't get off that easy. I heard what you said. You weren't the baby. You got some too. You just got the Bobby Richardson piece of it. You know, there's a lot of things that I learned from Senator Fleming. You know, while people talk about how tough he was, Senator Fleming could give you one of those big belly laughs that he would give and just rock the house with his belly laughs. And, you know, I always think of those. Everything from sometimes Governor Locke, I'd be strutting around the office. I'd do something good and think that I had done it. And I'd be strutting around the office. What do you think about this, Senator? I got this piece of legislation passed. Pow! And I'd throw a bill down on his desk and said, I got the support for it, and I got the blue sheet filled out, and I got the pink sheet filled out. What do you think about this? And he'd study it for a minute, and I'm thinking he would give me credit for it. Mom, he'd look at it for a minute, and he'd go, well, I guess even a blind hog runs up on an occasional acorn. And, you know, and it would take that whole, but he wouldn't be saying it in a bad way. He'd just be saying, you know, don't get beside yourself because that bill still had a long way to go. And that same bill, later on in the session, when it would get killed in rules or something, and I'm sitting in my office feeling bad, he'd come along and see you sitting in your office and go, hey, you want to go find another acorn? And take you out to lunch or something and have you sitting at the Edgewater, and you'd be sitting out there at the Edgewater and everybody come along who knows him, hey, you're out with your boss, huh? And it would just make you feel like the world, you're on the top of the world because everybody knew Senator Fleming and you're sitting with the boss, and it was just a crowning moment to be sitting there with him. And, you know, I remember we went over one time to a little town over in Anacortes, and we were sitting there, wasn't no more than two black people in the room, me and him. And we were at a reception. We got there and just hungry. It was a campaign reception. We're driving around and it was the first time we had a chance to get something to eat. And so we went in this reception And we just started eating and we were talking and people kept coming up to us and kept coming up to us and we were snacking on these chicken bones and on these chicken wings. And I looked down and we had a pile of chicken bones, Yemi, that you would not believe, that was just stacked up. And I said, Senator, look at us. Only 2 black guys in the room. Every stereotype that you could imagine, and we got this whole pile of chicken bones. And when he started laughing, the whole room just lit up. I mean, the whole room just lit up. And everybody came over. George, we knew you were here. We could hear you across the room. And they just came over and just started laughing with him. What's going on over here? We know you're up to something. And that was just him. And when he told them the story about the chicken bones, they went and came, come guys, come look at these bones George has. He was just that kind of guy. And we went over to Moses Lake one time on a campaign stop. And it was like that movie, for anybody that's ever seen that movie, Blazing Saddles. By the time we met with the people that we were meeting with for breakfast at 9 o'clock in this little town outside in Moses Lake, almost everybody in town knew the 2 black guys that were coming to town were in town. And it was like the whole town, word got out that the 2 guys were in town. Yeah, I heard you had come, George. The guy at the gas station told us. We stopped and got gas. He had called him and told us. And we had stopped and got something else because he always reads. Senator Fleming was a voracious reader. So he gets a newspaper every day. So the guy at the little newsstand told him that we were there. And by the time we got to the breakfast place, everybody in town had told, what was the guy, the older guy, Ron from Tub Hansen, had told Tub Hansen that we were in town. Tub Hansen said everybody in town knew that we were there. And it was just that kind of guy that Senator Fleming was. They just loved him all over and people knew him. And I'm not gonna hold you, but I just wanna say that, you know, the only 2 things that Governor Locke was absolutely right. That story about members that did not wanna ride on the elevator with Senator Fleming. But what they didn't tell you to finish that story out, it wound up being there were people who he always got the last laugh because he became so powerful that the same senators who didn't want to ride on the elevator with him at first wound up wanting to ride on the elevator because they would get on the elevator. George, could you help me get the votes that I need to get my bill out of committee? Because he could get the votes out of committee for him, or he was on rules. He could pull their bill out. That was the kind of guy that he was, but he was never bitter to Annette's what she had said earlier. And then the final thing that I'll say is this guy, one of the lessons that he always taught me too was you never go to Olympia because someone stole his bill one time. And I said, you worked so hard to get that piece of legislation passed. Aren't you ticked off that they stole your bill? He looked at me and Carver, he said, let me tell you something, Nate. If you're down here, Parent Kaplan, he said, if you're down here to get credit for something that people do for you, let me tell you something. You're in this business for the wrong reason. You're down here for what you can do for somebody. That's what you're down here for. And if you're not down here for that reason, then you shouldn't be working for me. You can go get you a job and work for somebody else. And Lee, I'm telling you, Lee Keller, that's what he stood for. And I'll never forget when a woman came for a bill that Ron and he put together on curb cuts. You see those little curb cuts that they have at the ADA thing so people in wheelchairs can get up and down those? Ron and him put that bill together before there was an ADA ever even put in place. And I never got what Senator Fleming was saying until a woman came in our office one day and she said, I need to find George Fleming. And I said, well, what's going on? She said, I want to talk to him. And so he said, well, what does she want? And I said, I don't know, Senator. She said she wants to talk to you. And she came in and she said, Senator, she said, I just want to say thank you. She said, you may not remember me, but she said, my husband was a veteran. And I was trying to push him in a wheelchair one day, and he fell off the wheelchair that I was on because I couldn't get him up. into some water, into the mud. And here I had a veteran who had risked his life for us and didn't have his leg because he gave his legs for this country. And I had to wait until somebody helped me pick him up and put him back in his chair. But because of your legislation that you sponsored, he felt like a man again because he could push himself up on those curb cuts that you and Ron Sims put up. That's the credit that he never took credit for. He never asked for credit. But those are the kinds of things that Senator Fleming did that I was proud to work for him because of. And I'm so glad that I got the opportunity. I'm so glad that he came this way. I am so proud of the fact that I got the chance to chisel my name on the wall that says I was one of George Fleming's kids that was able to help do something and do some good in this country. And one of the things that he did was to make sure that veterans could pull themselves up on the sidewalk. And that 106 people today, if you didn't see it, 106 people, because of that housing trust fund that Governor Locke talked about, 106 people 3 months ago got to roll into Fleming Place, a brand new housing complex that, because of that complex, are now not living on the streets anymore. They're living inside, in housing. And that's because of what he did. And I want to thank you, Senator Fleming, for that. I want to thank his family. I want to thank his kids for all of those nights that he was away from you. That's what he was out doing and making sure those veterans and that those homeless people had a place to go and a way to get up. And I want to thank you. And just watch this video. It'll go into more detail that King 5 has put together about that housing complex. Thank you all so much. I wish I was there with you, but continue to watch, continue to have an amazing place. I'm gonna get back to my daughter and my son, but thank you all so much. Mrs. Fleming, I'll stop by the house, Mom, when I get home. But you guys have a great rest of your day, and thank you for coming out today.
It was a childhood dream. As long as I know, I wanted to play in the Rose Bowl.
Fleming over left tackle this time.
At the University of Washington, he was a football star, playing halfback, returning kicks, and playing defense.
Fleming literally runs over, around, and through.
He played in 2 Rose Bowl games, both of which the Huskies won.
The pictures may be faded, but the legacy is sharp. A football star turned politician, George Fleming passed away in December 2021 at the age of 83.
We can't believe that he's gone.
In the midst of the civil rights movement, Fleming arrived at the state capitol to become the second African-American senator in Washington state history. As the battle for equal rights raged across the country, in Olympia, Fleming fought the same battle against many of his fellow lawmakers, some of whom refused to shake his hand or even ride in the same elevator.
I'm not satisfied with being a symbol. My efforts are geared towards being the most effective senator. I just happen to be Black.
Senator Fleming represented the multicultural and diverse 37th District, which includes Beacon Hill, the Central District, Rainier Beach, and Renton, but his impact was statewide.
He was a person that lived to do the right thing and to advocate for others.
In 1986, he helped establish the groundbreaking Housing Trust Fund. Some consider it his greatest legacy.
He thought everyone needed to have a home to live in.
The trust funds housing for people who are homeless or priced out of the market. In the last 35 years, more than $5 billion have been invested, creating roughly 55,000 units of housing. It's now a national model. The money even established housing named after the trust sponsor, the George Fleming Place, a new 106-unit affordable housing complex in the heart of Seattle's Central District.
When I came in here, it gave me the feeling of hope. Don't give up.
For people like Tracy Williams, it's provided a place to call home after years of being on the street.
It was a good feeling to walk around and say, "Ooh, this is mine." I wanted to cry. I have my own space, my own everything.
Fleming's work has never been more needed. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Washington has the 5th largest homeless population in the U.S., a population that has increased 30% in the past decade.
There's a lot of people that is getting put out on the streets because they can't afford housing.
He is one of our heroes.
Sharon Lee worked alongside Fleming to help create the fund. Now Lee heads up the state's Low-Income Housing Institute.
People look at the homeless problem like it can't ever be solved. Well, this is an example of how you can systematically house people who are previously homeless. Generations of people are living in housing that he created.
Today that includes housing for a wider array of people in need. Immigrants from countries such as Afghanistan.
We recently moved in 13 Afghan refugee families.
Families like this one who fled chaos and bloodshed now find comfort and safety.
I'm happy because I'm safe from Taliban.
My name is Milad.
My name is Iltaf.
I'm 12 years old.
9 years old.
This is our home in America.
Everyone loves my mom's cooking. My dad, every year, he would hold a ball where he would bring his constituents down to Olympia.
And everybody would just love that food. Yum.
Both sides of the aisle would come,
Bridging communities.
and it's special to the heart. Yeah, he loved it.
Fleming's family is proud of all of his efforts in office. Beyond housing, he created the state office that supports women and minority-owned businesses. Another victory, one we celebrate every year, the official Martin Luther King holiday.
He is the measurement of every man that I've ever encountered. No one's matched that. Sorry. But it's just true.
But unfortunately, George is not here anymore. How are you doing living the next half of your life without him?
I'm just going to remember him and keep on loving him.
His family is committed to keeping his legacy alive. Football hero, trailblazing state senator, and most importantly to them, a family man.
He was such a sweet, wonderful person. I knew that all along, but I even know it more now because now I'm missing him.
For Facing Race, I'm PJ Randhawa.
Boy, you heard so much wisdom tonight. I love him described as Papa. That was the censure. I want to thank Nate Miles, for those that don't know, the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at Eli Lilly, the company, and former legislative aide to Senator George Fleming. If Nate could hear, I want to say thank you very much, Nate, for that 2 minutes. There's only one person who can really take us home at a moment like this, and once again, I'm going to call on my good friend, Ron Sims, who will lead us in prayer. And Barbara, would you mind trying to work your way up to the piano? I think Barbara's going to grace us. Okay, very good. So, Ron, we're going to let Barbara get situated here. She's going to get her. It's been a glorious afternoon, hasn't it? All right, Ron Sims.
My father was a pastor, and so he always required that everybody stand and hold each other's hands. He always used to say that love and hope are the hands you hold. Dear Father, we thank you for the life that you allowed us to share. He's gone, and we miss him. But we are better individuals, more committed than ever at fulfilling his dream. I want to thank you for the blessings of family and of friends. I thank you for the stories that we've been told and the stories that we will continue to hear about this extraordinary gift you gave us in the name of George Fleming, extraordinary senator, a good friend, a great athlete, but a good friend. So thank you for bringing him into our lives. thank you for reminding us that we needed to share the gift that you gave us. And it was a gift. A gift. A gift. And we will forever thank you for this gift. In all things we pray and we say, Amen.
If you wanna know where I'm going, where I'm going soon. If anybody asks you where I'm going, where I'm going soon, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder to be with my Lord. If I can take the pain, the heartaches they bring, the comforting in knowing I'll soon be gone. As God gives me grace, I'll run this race until I see my Savior face to face. Oh, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder to be with my Lord. Oh, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder to be with my Lord. Hey, as God gives me grace, I'm gonna run this race, yeah, until I see my Savior face to face. As God gives me grace, I'm gonna run this race until I see my Savior face to face. Oh, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder to be with my Lord. Take it from George Fleming, I'm going up yonder, I'm going up yonder, I'm going